2,000 years ago, in the heart of Rome, stood a monument unlike any the world had ever seen. The Flavian Amphitheatre, better known today as the Colosseum. It wasn't just stone and marble, it was power made visible. A promise from emperors to the people: we will give you bread and we will give you blood. From the moment you stepped through its massive arches, the air shifted. The roar of 50,000 voices rolled like thunder, echoing off towering walls of gleaming travertine. Sunlight pierced the open sky above, casting dramatic shafts across the sand-covered arena floor. Vendors shouted, gamblers whispered, and nobles reclined on silk cushions while slaves rushed with trays of figs and wine. Then, a sudden silence. The emperor raised his hand. A blare of horns shattered the stillness, gates groaned open, and from the shadows emerged gladiators, men trained to kill or die. Their armor glimmered in the harsh Roman sun, bronze helmets adorned with crests, leather straps tightening across muscular chests, short swords flashing as they saluted the imperial box. For the crowd, this was more than entertainment. It was a ritual of dominance. Here, emperors proved their generosity by giving Rome a spectacle unlike any other civilization could offer. But beneath the grandeur, a darker reality lay hidden. Beneath the arena, narrow tunnels stretched like veins through the earth, where slaves prepared wild beasts, sharpened weapons, and prayed before facing certain death. When the first clash came, steel against steel, roar against roar, the Colosseum became a living creature. Dust spiraled into the sunlight as swords scraped shields, blood stained the pale sand. Every gasp, every scream, every fatal strike was swallowed by the chants of the masses. Habet! Habet! He's done for. This was Rome at its peak, where glory, cruelty, and obsession intertwined, a city that called itself eternal, yet built its empire on the bones of men who had no choice but to fight.
Beneath the roaring chaos of the Colosseum, hidden from the eyes of 50,000 spectators, stretched a labyrinth of darkness. These underground chambers, the Hypogeum, were the true heart of Rome's greatest arena. Narrow corridors smelled of damp stone, blood and fear. Oil lamps flickered along rough walls, casting trembling shadows across cages filled with wild beasts. Lions pacing restlessly, panthers growling in the dark, crocodiles splashing in shallow pits. Here, slaves and engineers worked in a frenzy. Massive wooden elevators, powered by pulleys and hundreds of men, creaked under the weight of cages and platforms. A signal from above, and with a thunderous crash, hidden trapdoors opened. In an instant, a lion could rise from the depths, directly into the arena, leaping into sunlight and chaos. The Hypogeum wasn't just a place of waiting, it was a theater of terror. Gladiators gathered in silence, some sharpening blades, others whispering prayers to forgotten gods. You could hear the muffled roar of the crowd above, their chants vibrating through the stone. Sweat glistened on scarred backs. For some, these tunnels were their last sanctuary before death. For others, they were a prison before glory. Rome craved spectacle beyond imagination. Engineers flooded the arena with water, transforming it into a temporary lake where entire naval battles played out before the astonished crowd. Hundreds of slaves worked tirelessly to make it happen, filling reservoirs, shifting gates, and staging illusions that turned blood into theater. Above, the emperor sat beneath a gilded canopy, watching with cold fascination. For him, the Colosseum was more than entertainment. It was a weapon of control. The people cheered, forgetting hunger and politics, while Rome's rulers tightened their grip on power. Every scream, every roar, every clash of steel echoed through these tunnels. Down here, beneath the sunlit stage, the Colosseum's beating heart never stopped. When the gates creaked open and sunlight flooded the arena, the real terror began. For the Romans, death alone was not enough. It had to be spectacle. Exotic beasts, shipped from the farthest corners of the empire, were unleashed into the sand. African lions roared, their golden manes burning in the sunlight. Tigers from India prowled low, eyes fixed on their prey. Elephants thundered forward, their tusks gleaming, while bears from the northern forests swiped claws that could shatter bone. Each creature was a trophy, proof of Rome's dominion over the known world. But to the gladiators below, they were executioners, armed with nothing more than short swords, spears, or sometimes just a wooden shield. Men were forced to face predators they had never seen before. Sometimes the fights weren't between man and beast, but beast against beast. Tigers leapt at lions, crocodiles wrestled bears, wolves tore into wild boars. The crowd screamed, hungry for chaos, demanding more. For them, this was Rome's theater of power, a place where nature itself was bent to imperial will. But the cruelty didn't stop there. At midday, when the morning's battles were over, the real executions began. Prisoners of war, criminals, and political enemies were paraded before the crowd. Some were tied to stakes, others forced into grotesque reenactments of myths. Prometheus torn apart by an eagle, Orpheus devoured by beasts, Daedalus hurled into an artificial sea. The audience cheered not with malice, but with awe. To them, the Colosseum wasn't just blood and death, it was Rome itself, invincible and eternal. Every scream was an echo of power. Every fallen body reminded the world, defy Rome, and this is your fate. And yet, deep beneath the sand, the stench of blood mixed with incense. Slaves dragged corpses away through hidden tunnels. The arena was swept clean. By the next morning, the Colosseum would look untouched, as if nothing had happened. But the ghosts remained, whispering beneath the marble and stone. Behind the towering walls of the Colosseum, away from the thunder of the crowds, another world existed. Here, in dimly lit Ludus Gladiatorius, the gladiator schools. Men trained, suffered, and forged unbreakable bonds. Some were slaves taken in war, others criminals, and a few, free men lured by the promise of wealth and glory. Days began before dawn. The clang of iron filled the air as wooden swords struck against shields. Sweat dripped onto the dusty training grounds, and the laniste, the ruthless trainers, shouted commands. Gladiators practiced dodges, thrusts, and deadly spins under the relentless gaze of their masters. Injuries were common. Weakness meant death, either in training or in the arena. Yet, despite the brutality, a strange brotherhood formed. In the shadow of death, gladiators became family. They shared food, secrets, and fears. They understood what it meant to live with death a heartbeat away. Some gladiators rose above the rest, becoming heroes of Rome. Names like Spiculus and Piscus were whispered among the people, celebrated for their unmatched skill and ferocity. Victorious fighters were showered with prizes, golden wreaths, and sometimes freedom. But not all accepted their fate. Whispers spread of mutinies and rebellions. The most famous of them all, Spartacus, began as just another man forced to fight, until he led the largest slave uprising in Roman history. Though crushed, his name lived on, striking fear into the Senate and inspiring hope among the oppressed. Inside the Colosseum, loyalty could be bought, but betrayal was never far. Some gladiators sabotaged rivals, others earned secret favors from powerful patrons. Every fight was more than survival. It was politics written in blood. Above them, emperors watched like gods. For them, gladiators were living weapons, tools to win the people's love and cement their own power. But to the man in the sand, the Colosseum was both prison and stage, a place where every heartbeat echoed louder than the crowd. For centuries, the Colosseum was Rome's beating heart, a place where emperors shaped destiny, where the roar of the crowd echoed like thunder, and where blood was spilled to feed power. But no empire lasted forever, and neither did the games. By the 3rd century, the cracks began to show. Rome's borders were under siege, its coffers drained, and its people restless. Maintaining the grand spectacles became too costly, even for the empire's wealth. The wild animals that once roared across the arena now had to be imported from Africa and Asia at staggering expense. Slowly, the gladiatorial games began to wane. A new force, however, sealed the arena's fate: Christianity. As the faith spread through Rome, its leaders condemned the games as inhuman and sinful. By the 5th century, under Emperor Honorius, gladiator combat was banned. The Colosseum's sands fell silent. No longer did lions leap from trapdoors. No longer did swords clash beneath the sun. But silence didn't mean peace. The Colosseum suffered earthquakes, fires, and neglect. Marble was stripped from its walls to build new churches and palaces. Where once emperors and senators sat beneath golden canopies, weeds grew between cracked stones. And yet, even in ruin, the Colosseum endured. Its towering arches and scarred walls became a monument to Rome's contradictions, its glory and its cruelty, its power and its downfall. Travelers from across the world came to stand where gladiators once fought and emperors once ruled, imagining the echoes of the past in the still air. Today, the Colosseum is silent, but if you listen closely, you can almost hear the roar of 50,000 voices, the clash of steel, the cries of victory and death. It stands as both a warning and a reminder. Even the mightiest empires and their grandest spectacles eventually fall.